yeah, 2011, winning the Olympia, going to India a week after, that was the hardest thing. Because I ain't never competed a week after any show like that. You know what I'm saying? Like travel wise.
Yeah.
And then going to a different country, going against the same dudes that want to get some get back after you just beat them.
For sure.
And then, you know, everybody's like, okay, so now that's over. Now what? I'm like, I still got to stay in shape, bro, because.
Yeah, I've always been so curious at that level. Like, what do you? I mean, obviously, you have your diet, you know, your comp prep diet, and all this stuff changes. The drugs, all this kind of shit. But like, I just at that level, I think a lot of people have a perception of bodybuilding that I don't know is necessarily true. And I've always kind of wanted to talk about this with people who've done this, and a lot of people don't like to talk about it. But like, the gear stuff, because obviously, you know, we know people who've come and gone as far as like, you know, maybe going a little too hard in the sport, even outside of the sport, in connection to the sport, bodybuilders,
the things that were linked to it, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so the competitive nature kept your ass in the gym or on the field. Now, to answer your question, I mean, I was competing naturally against guys that weren't.
Yeah.
And that wasn't by choice. My friend, shout out to Josh Crandall and John Bauer out of Colorado. They were just like, hey, you should do this bodybuilding shit. I ended up doing it. I'm at the show. The day of the show, I'm like, hey, I got to go take a piss. Where I go pee at, you know, to go do the drug test. And they're like, ain't no drug test. I was like, word? Like you, they're like, see, if we would have told you beforehand, you would have never done it. When I did 2 shows, I did the Northern Colorado and then I did the Mr. Colorado my first year. I won the overall, I won every title in my first show. The second show, I won my weight division, but didn't win the overall. Lost by like a point or something.
Yeah.
After that, I was like, you know, if I were to do something, now would be the time, because I kind of proved myself. I kind of seen like what's out there as far as like, you know, top level physiques, at least on the local amateur level.
Yeah.
And I was already beating guys that were taking stuff. So I started off with just a little bit of test. And it was,
what's a little bit of test?
When I say a little bit of test, that means 1 cc a week of test. Like when I say a little bit, that was 1 cc a deca a week.
Yeah.
That was a cycle.
Yeah.
And it worked.
It's interesting because I've seen photos of you playing college basketball. I think you had these like crazy calves. And you just had crazy, there's always genetic outliers, just period, where people are, I mean, like Ronnie Coleman, from what I understood before he ever got on, also just looked like a freak bodybuilder already.
Bro, he played football jacked. And I know that for a fact, because you know he went to Grambling, right?
Yeah.
So I had family that played there too, that went there as well. And so background on my family is we're all from the Deep South. My mom's from Zachary, Louisiana. My dad was from Dallas, Fort Worth. All my family either went to Southern or Grambling. And they would tell me about Ronnie, and I'm like, was he really jacked like that? They're like, bro, like he was huge.
I just got the lottery on genetics. You too, though.
Just got, I mean, we found our calling basically because, you know, Ronnie he wasn't playing on Sundays. He wasn't playing on Sundays in the NFL. But, you know, God had a better purpose for him. And thank God it did happen that way, because we would have never seen the feats of strength. God. Ronnie Coleman is definitely an anomaly, because we have never seen someone, I mean, you're strong as and I got to shout you out on that. There's shit. People have asked me like, you train like, I was like, fuck no, I ain't doing lifting girls and dumbbells. I was like, nah, but I'll look like it. But Ronnie could do both.
Yeah, I remember and he was one of the first people I saw where I was like, whoa, I want to be like this. That's when I really got into bodybuilding.
Yeah, he's just, it's wild what the body can do, right? And the motivation and all that. But as far as the gear stuff, I mean, I always kept it minimal, because I was already beating guys that were taking stuff like a lot. When I say a lot, we're talking about, you know, a couple grams of test a week. And I've
a couple grams,
bro. But let's keep it real. Like, there's a lot of dudes, man, that if they were to be hit with a lie detector, they're like, oh yeah, I run that right now. I think the problem was that when people were able to get all different types of stuff, it's like, okay, you could pick any car. You're not going to just pick one. You're going to pick 10.
Yeah.
So with the gear, I think what happened, at least for me, was Did I have access? Yes. But then I was more just like in a way, I wouldn't call myself a savant, but I was like, well, what does Winnie do? What does Primo do? What does this do? What does that? I don't need all of it at once. Like, I need to understand what's its main purpose.
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to run this race, the fastest time in this race for the Olympic final. I don't need to be running that, off season, just to look swole for vanity purposes. My whole thing was just for competition, and it worked. I will say the insecurities do set in when you are, I was already winning the Olympia, and I remember going against Kai, and I had heard all these different cycles that he was doing, right? And guys on the East Coast, I mean, they may not like to hear this from me being a West Coast guy, but they're usually harder for a reason.
I've heard this.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've heard this.
And I'm like, man, what's he taking? You know what I'm saying? Because you're just curious. And sometimes you're like, I don't want to hear this shit. But at some point I was like, man, I just want to know. And I was like, man, I can't do that.
I've heard crazy things about Kai as well.
Yeah.
I've never spoken in depth to him about it.
And
I'd
it's
love
not to shout him out in a negative way, but like we all hear things. It was more just like the East Coast guys taking more grams of this and gram of here, 12 IUs of growth or insulin and all this other shit. I'm just like, man, that just sounds like a lot of pinning. Even as I'm explaining it, it's just a lot.
I can't believe that. Also, this is another caveat I think people don't understand, because when we start talking about gear, people get all like, they start listening like, oh, I need to do this and that. This is not for everyone. Like, some people just genetically clearly can take a lot more of that, what would damage a lot of normal people.
Oh, 100%. If it was easy, everybody'd be good. At the end of the day, I mean, we see the barrier of entry going into a gym, bringing their tripod, and they can train. But then you see the other person do the same thing, and now they're running a real stack. But they all only get to a certain level, right? I grew up in Seattle, Washington, inner city, late, in the 80s and early 90s and stuff, where, gang banging was the thing, right? Just same out here, same out in Cali. And you get to see people making wrong decisions. Well, I got to see people make bad decisions with that, and I get to see bad decisions be made with just regular drugs and steroids.
Yeah.
So it made me be hesitant on just saying, well, I'm just going to take everything. In fact, I've said it before. Someone want to throw me some money, we do the lie detector. I did the 2007 Arnold Classic. And then I placed fifth. And I remember looking at my coach, and he was like, well, if you can get another off season, we can try some growth. And I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
And
this is in 2007? Okay.
This was literally, what's the year? 17 years. God.
Yeah, I know. It's tripped me out too, man.
Dude.
I know. Time's crazy.
I'm old now. So my wife's going to hate it when she hears me say it. She's like, stop saying how old
you're not old, but you've done this for a lot longer than,
So, I said, okay, that off season, just a couple IUs twice a day. I went from off season of like 250 to 270, and it was like ripped. I'm already round.
Yeah.
So now I just look more cartoonish.
Yeah.
And it helped, you know. And if you look at the pictures from 2007 Arnold Classic and then 2008 Arnold Classic, it's a clear difference. But the point I'm making is, especially to the young adults that are, listening, watching, is that imagine giving yourself this much time to actually make that jump.